Welcome back, everyone. We have two law back-to-back lectures, so I hope you guys are excited. Up now, we have Veda, and she's going to be doing her talk on You Did What? A game dev legal bingo experience. So I will give the stage to you now. Good luck.
Thank you. All right, so everybody, thank you so much for showing up to Legal Bingo. This is my first time doing it virtually, so this is going to be a fun little QA type experiment. But yeah, we're just going to have some fun with it and just go through it. So here we go. First of all, my name is Veda Cruz. I will be your host of Legal Bingo today. I am a video game lawyer and an indie developer. I used to be at Gearbox Software as part of their legal team. I was a corporate attorney there. So I got a good feel of what, a big AAA company kind of needs on the legal side. And now I'm an attorney at Odin Law and Media, which is a boutique video game law firm, which is fun because now I get to work with indies. So I've kind of gotten to see, well, not just indies, mid-size and above. So gotten to work with a whole swath of different video game companies and different stages and everything. I'm also an adjunct professor of video game law and business at the University of Miami. That's been very fulfilling as I teach developers the fundamentals that they need to know for starting their own studio or just getting into game development. Spoiler alert, some of the stuff that we'll be talking about today. I am also a certified Scrum Master. I went to my first game jam back in January of this year, and it was so much fun that I was like, you know what? Let me actually look more into production. This is really interesting. So I got the certification to be a Scrum Master, and it was really informative and cool. Also, took a sabbatical after last year for about a year. And during that time, I became a certified personal trainer and nutrition coach and founded Mana and Muscle, which is a wellness guild or initiative for devs and creatives. And yeah, currently developing Zumi Dash, which is in alpha on itch.io. So you can feel free to look me up and check it out there and download it and give me feedback because I really enjoy getting all that feedback process. We're in our QA era, so we're trying to learn from each other. Wanted to say real quick before I start that this is not legal advice. This is not legal advice. This is not legal advice. This is information for educational purposes only. And I'm here today in my role as an educator. I want to learn you a thing about legal when it comes to game dev, but I'm not here as your lawyer. Everything that we cover is meant to help you learn and think through these issues, but it's not legal advice. And if you run into a specific problem, please reach out to a qualified attorney who can give guidance tailored to your situation, because believe it or not, everybody's situation is unique. There's always some tiny little factor that makes it different. So TLDR, get a lawyer. Yes, I am a lawyer, but I'm not your lawyer. Feel free to scan that QR code if you want more information on that. But yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. So today's goal, like I said, I've been on both sides as a developer and as a lawyer, and I know how overwhelming it feels to wonder if you missed something or if something didn't happen yet that was supposed to happen that could potentially derail your project. So my goal today is pretty simple. It is to help you spot these issues early so you can focus on building the game that you actually want to make. Not only help you spot these issues early, but let's do it in a fun way because we are trying to get into games, right? Like we're developing games out here. So what better way to teach than to do it in a game format? So yeah, and that was a picture of me with one of my cats at the 2025 Global Game Jam. So yeah, without further ado, let's play some legal bingo. So, quick rules. This will mostly be for people who haven't played bingo before, but basically we're going to go over 25 common game dev legal pitfalls. You're going to mark your card if you've done it, and the first to bingo yells it out virtually because I know that we're virtually, you can't just like literally yell it out. And no worries, no judgment. We're here to learn, like I said. Okay, so if you have done some of the things I've mentioned, it's fine. We can fix it, hopefully, by you learning different things. And here's how we're going to do it. So on the next slide, I'm going to put a picture of a 5x5 bingo card. It's going to be filled with these legal pitfalls. If we were in person, they would be randomized. But due to the restrictions of virtual, we're just going to take a screenshot and then everybody's going to be in the same order. So you just, play. And if you get bingo, keep listening because there might be new stuff you haven't learned about. You're going to listen for the call. So I'm going to read out each pitfall one by one as part of the talk. You're going to check your card. And if the pitfall I read is on your card and it applies to you, you mark that square. Please use the free space. Everyone automatically gets to mark the middle free space. And you're going to, in the rules of traditional bingo, aim for a line. So the goal is to mark 5 squares in a row, horizontally, vertically, or diagonally. And if you've done that horizontally, vertically, or diagonally, you're going to yell bingo. And when you've got 5 in a row, once you do that, you yell it. Virtually, like I said, I know that we don't have microphones and stuff, but feel free to type it in the chat if you hit bingo and when, so that we know, like, okay, yeah, I'm not the only one that's been hitting bingo. Like, this is a joint community effort kind of thing. So here is the bingo card. Please take a screenshot if you want to play. If you just want to sit and listen to some of these pitfalls and practical tips and advice, also do that. Feel free to take a picture with your phone if you don't have screenshot functionality. I'll leave this up for another minute. But yeah, as you can see, the free space is but we're friends, and we'll see how that comes into play later as we play. But it's a very common thing that I've heard a lot, and that you might have said, with your other indie dev friends, hey, we'll figure it out later kind of thing. But it's important to know that just because you're friends doesn't mean that you're business partners or good relationship when it comes to business. All right, so hopefully you've gotten the screenshot at this point, or you've taken a picture with your phone. And now we're just going to get into it. So first, last, let's play test. You're not my guinea pigs, that's a joke. But seriously, you're officially QAing the first version of virtual legal bingo. So I would appreciate all feedback. Let me know if it's fun. Let me know if there's ways I can improve, blah, blah, blah. I feel like there's probably some kind of bingo software out there to do this with. So keep it in mind for next time. Let's play. All right. So first, if you have had no contract with a collaborator, you've been working with someone on the game or whatever project it is you're working on, and you had no contract, mark your bingo card now. Okay. So, some issues with this. If you don't have a contract with a collaborator and things go south at some point of game development, you don't have things in writing, lawyers always tell you, get it in writing. It's for a reason. It's so that there's no he she said, they said, there is just, it's written in plain text and you can refer back to it when you need it. Always put those roles, responsibilities, and ownership in writing so that it's very clear amongst the entire team who's doing what and who owns what. Because if somebody decides to walk away, it'd be nice if they walked away with only the stuff that they might have worked on instead of the entire project. Or actually, they don't walk away with the project or any part of it because you had a contract in place that said, everything I create now goes to, the game dev company that we created. Use short and the plain language contracts if the long ones feel overwhelming. I know that we've all opened up a long contract and been like, this is super stressful. I don't even want to begin to read it because on top of that, it's legal jargony type language. I get it. A lease agreement, forget it. All those privacy policies that you get when you open up a game, I get it. There's a lot of text, but there's important stuff inside those documents, of course. So if you don't want to make it super long, but you still want to get the important stuff, you can work with a lawyer who can help you, kind of minimize it, but at least have something. The longer ones tend to protect you better, but honestly, as opposed to having nothing, definitely have something. And again, in writing. Contracts, basically, they protect friendships. They set clear expectations. And that way, like I said, if there's any kind of issue in the future, you are able to talk it out and have something to refer to instead of just going on some kind of assumption. Okay, next. Use fan art in your promotional materials. If you have ever taken some really cool fan art of either another game or of your game, somebody made really cool fan art of your game and then you want to use it in promotional materials, mark your bingo card because this is a tough one that people can get into. It's important to get written permission from the artist. I think that a lot of us here probably have a lot of respect for artists, as I do, and it's important that we respect their work and not just take it for our purposes, even if it was based on the game that we made. It's important for them to say, it's fine. It's important to also try and use original or licensed artwork in anything that is public facing. And if you really like the fan artist style or you really like their work, consider commissioning something in the future or consider paying them for a license to use it or to buy it outright, whatever it is. There's lots of ways that we can go about this. Okay. Mark your card if you have ever copied a terms of service or a privacy policy from another game. So this is, like I said, common one. I get it. It's other people have already done the work. Copy and paste it. At least you have something. Sure, but is their privacy policy or terms of service going to explain what your game is or apply to your game? If you copy the terms of service of an online game and you created a single player offline game, there's probably going to be a lot of stuff in there that you are now taking on responsibility for, but that doesn't really apply to you. So why take on the extra responsibility and not just, make one bespoke for you? And of course, like I said, working with a lawyer is important with this specifically, especially privacy, because there's a lot of rules and regulations around this. But terms of service is there to protect your game and your IP. So it's good to get these things, like I said, in writing, but also in a way that is structured to protect your game specifically. Every business has different needs. Do not assume that other company, like I mentioned, their stuff fits yours, because it might be completely different. They might even have stuff that completely contradicts your game, and then you can get in trouble for not saying true things in the contract. Also, laws vary by region. The text that you copied might not even apply to your users, so it's important to keep that in mind. Somebody in Europe might have completely different regulations on them that they have to abide by than something that's created in the US and sold in the US, so it's important to keep that in mind. Also, invest in a customized one, like I said. It is something that you will need, and as you make updates to your game, you might need to update it, sure. But at least having one document that you can point to and put in your Steam submission or Unity or whatever it is that you're working on, it's good to have that just in your back pocket, but also publicly available for people to see. Okay, mark your card if you didn't define who owns the game. Let's say you were working with a group of 4 people and you're just all, one person's programming, the other person's doing the art, someone else is doing audio. And after everything is said and done, or even during everything that's happening, nobody has said, okay, I explicitly own this game. The idea is, oh, we all own it. That can get tricky. And it's important to speak to a lawyer when you are in that world, because you want to avoid the we'll figure it out later kind of thing. It's always when money's on the table that relationships start to take an interesting turn, because as you've worked on this project, you might have thought, oh, we're all doing this, 50-50, 25%, 25%, 25%, 25%. But then turns out that somebody has issues when it's like, no, but I actually contributed 70% of the entire game. We were supposed to be 4th partners, but actually I did more. You don't want to have those discussions when the game is out and you've started to have money coming in. You want to have that discussion first before the disputes arise or explode, as I wrote. Another thing is that you want to decide these things early. So specifically, you want to decide who owns what early. That way there's no confusion later about what someone might have contributed or what somebody may have added onto but not explicitly owned. It's important to put these things into an agreement. Sometimes these things can all be solved by creating a company and then assigning everything that everybody contributes to that company. But if you're not creating that company, you're not at that stage yet, get something in writing, or at least start tracking, who's done what, so that we know, all right, well, you did that. There's no confusion about who did what. And then it's easier once you actually get to the point of getting a contract, like a fully fledged one, that you already have the work done. You don't have to go back and look through every asset in the engine to be like, who did this, who did that? I don't even remember. That person left a year ago. I don't know what to do there. So mark your card if you didn't define who owns the game. Next, if you have used royalty-free music without reading the license, either as placeholder or in general, or made it into your final product. If you've done this, please mark your bingo card. If you've done this, it's really important to let you all know that royalty-free does not necessarily mean free for everything. Okay, it does not. These are licenses a lot of the times for you to use that audio, that music, that sound effect, that artwork, whatever it is. And you have to check these terms so that you know whether you can use it for commercial use or personal use only. A lot of these licenses say free for personal use, which means, okay, yeah, you can use it in your project that you show around to your friends, but you're not offering it for sale, for example. Whereas other times these licenses will be like, okay, maybe it is free for commercial use. So you could go on and sell the game with the asset, the soundtrack, the whatever in there, and there's no issue. But if it says for personal use and you decide to sell it on Steam, you're going to run into issues with the copyright owner. And this all boils down to copyright law, which is its own labyrinth of understanding. Again, a point at which you might consult with a lawyer to know like what are the things you have to look out for. But if you're going to do this, make sure that you keep receipts of whatever you downloaded. Hopefully this inspires you to read the license next time. A lot of these websites like Pixabay or Free Sound, I think, they have some kind of pop up next to the asset that says, oh, free for this kind of use. Oh, free for that kind of use. Know what that says, first of all, but also keep receipts or these licenses in a safe place for proof. Some, file in your desktop or something, just so that you can refer back to it and be like, no, but when I downloaded this, it was this kind of license. And then if you're in doubt, contact the composer. Buy the commercial license if you really want to use it in the game and you don't want to hire like an in-house sound designer or audio mixer or composer for the soundtrack for your game or for any of the sounds that you want to put in. If in doubt, first of all, check the license, but also try and get the rights to it so that there's no confusion about ownership, and for two reasons. One, so that people don't come after you for this, the original copyright holder doesn't come after you for this, but also so that you can know what you're allowed to use. And if you want to sell your game in the future, I can tell you that either an investor, if you're looking for funding, or another studio trying to acquire yours is going to ask you, do you own everything in this game? Do you have a clean chain of title for all the assets in this game? And if you can't answer yes because of this, I hate for that deal to blow up because of that, So yeah, check the license and buy it or license the proper rights to it if you can. Next, mark your bingo card if you've ever used a screenshot of another game in your pitch. All right, so you're trying to show, oh, my game is like Metroid, but with Pokemon features. If you use the screenshots of Metroid or Pokemon in the pitch, there are pitfalls with that. You have to clearly mark it as mock-up or not final if you're going to do that, all right? Ideally, you stick to your own work. You let your work kind of speak for itself. You don't have to lean so much on other games that are already out there to kind of express what you want to express, or any of those kinds of like licensed assets in your pitches. Also, if your game ends up not really being like, oh, it's not really Metroid or Pokemon, much less any mix of the two, that can kill trust with publishers or investors. So there is a business angle that you can think of when it comes to this, where it's not just like the legal issue of like using, those other licensed properties in your pitch, but also the business angle of, well, if I lose trust with them because I said it was this, but it's not actually that, then that sucks, because now the publisher investor might pull out and you probably worked so hard to get to the point, or a publisher would even listen to the pitch, or an investor would give a shot with their money. So just mark it as mock-up, not final, whatever you got to do. And when you can, and the best option is to probably use your own work. Okay. And that goes for a lot of things, by the way, but yeah, for this one. Next. If you have used free stock images without checking the license, mark your bingo card. This one goes a little bit with the other one about audio, but this one is like pretty big because it goes into concepting. It goes into textures that you actually put onto the assets that you have in either Unreal, Unity, or whatever it is. This also goes for, like I said, reference. Just if you've ever used free stock images without checking the license, check the license. Because not all free images, just like before, are cleared for commercial use. Sometimes the fine print says, oh, it's okay for personal use only. So that means that you can't necessarily go around selling it. So if that image makes it into the final version of your game, there are lots of things that can happen here. But one of the ones that can happen is that your game could potentially get taken down from the store that it's being sold on, because when you try and sell your game on those stores, a lot of times you have to ascertain, okay, I do own everything that I put into this game. Everything is properly licensed. That's where that language comes into play. So when in doubt, buy the proper license, right? Commission your own art. If this is the time to fire up Microsoft Paint and unleash your masterpiece into the world, maybe with that Switch 2 really cool like mouse feature that they have, sure, do it. It is the time to be as original as you can, because unless the license permits the kind of usage that you want, it's important to make sure that what you're putting into your game is original. So keeping a record of where each image came from and its license attached to it is really important if you're going to go the route of using like free stock images. But like I said, check the license, because having the license in your arsenal is not going to help you when someone notices like, hey, that like stock image of somebody eating cereal in the morning is not yours. It's got this like Getty Images watermark on it. That's weird. Okay. But keeping the record at least lets you see like, okay, okay, this specific image, I got to switch out because it's not working. Okay. Next. If you've shared assets without an NDA, please mark your bingo card. This one can happen all the time. This one is a lot more about risk, right? So if you're sharing the assets, okay, what does share mean? Share could mean that you're showing someone the assets. Oh, I shared it with my friend. I showed them the game. Sharing could also mean you're sending them your build. You're sending them the art asset, whatever it is. If you start doing this with parties that you don't have an NDA with and it's clearly sensitive information, there's issues here. There's issues of disclosure where they can just, show the asset to the world without your permission, but you didn't have a contract in place or even told them that it's confidential. That brings up issues. So when you can, be wary of who you share the early builds with. Be wary of who you share the art with, the sound with, whoever, and what programs you use to send it. Like in the age of AI, this is super important because now we know that if you are using, I don't know, ChatGPT to like share something, as we saw like a couple of weeks or months ago, it was like it might end up in the archives of the internet. I don't know. But just be careful with what you're doing and be aware and judge the level of risk, right? If you're sharing super sensitive, like highly sensitive business documents, publishing agreement, for example, with another party, and assuming that the publishing agreement let you do that in the first place, you might want to sign an NDA. NDA stands for non-disclosure agreement, for those who don't know. And it applies when you're sharing sensitive files or documents or anything else. So it's just one tool in your legal toolbox to help protect your IP. And when you can, this happens a lot with playtesting, watermark or track access to the builds or assets when possible. That way, if somebody does leak it online, especially like I said in the playtest phase, you know who did it. Sometimes they'll put like a unique ID to every computer that is able to access the playtest. Maybe that implies some privacy rights, but also you as the game developer maybe want to be sure that there aren't going to be leaks, especially with bigger companies that have a lot on the line when it comes to like leaks like that. All right. So yeah, shared assets without an NDA, not the best, but it's more a question of risk. Depends who you're sending it to, depends what you're sending. You should be able to make that analysis yourself. Having a stock NDA that you can give people is a really good idea just to have it. Okay. So mark your bingo card if you have ignored privacy rules for analytics, because we all know that, privacy comes into play when Facebook is like, oh, we're going to like, keep all your data and then use it to create marketing personas around you. And also we didn't get your consent for that. That's one thing. But it's another thing when you make a game in Unity, for example, and then you want to turn on Unity Analytics and hopefully they ask you for a privacy policy. But if there is no concept of privacy either in your workflow or public to the user, that can cause privacy issues, especially depending on the kind of information that you're collecting. If you are collecting player data, you have to disclose it in a privacy policy. Privacy comes into play, the concept of privacy comes into play with personal information, right? Personally identifiable information. When you start collecting that kind of data, then you have a big responsibility. Like, I wish I had like the Spider-Man that's like, oh, with great power comes great responsibility. It's true. You can do a lot with email. You can do a lot with user ID. You can do a lot with height, weight. I mean, I can't imagine why you would collect that for a game, but like, date of birth, all these different aspects of personally identifiable information that might be good for either marketing or for user research purposes. But if you don't disclose it and you just take it, you have a lot of responsibility on your hands to safeguard that data. All right. So it's a good idea to not collect more data than you actually need. That way you don't have to shoulder that huge responsibility that comes with having a lot of data. Another quick, this is just a recurring thing. Get a lawyer to help you with your privacy policy, because this stuff is complex. There's a lot of rules that apply to every different states, different countries, EU residents versus people in Brazil versus there's all around the world, different privacy regulations, and depending where you sell the game, but also where you collect the person's data, it might implicate different laws. And the people that are best equipped to look into that are lawyers who can refer you to somebody who can help or who can help you themselves. So privacy is a thing. Privacy is important. Honestly, practicing privacy by design is great. That way you just embed all of your privacy stuff in the beginning of the game design instead of towards the end when it might be a little too late to change your consent flow for, email or something. So just things to keep in mind. Next, mark your bingo card if you have ever split revenue on a handshake deal. All right. So you made the game. It was during the game jam, whatever. It was at the end of the night. It was late. And then you were like, all right, we're going to go 50-50. All right. We're just going I don't know why I'm acting drunk. You're tired, right? You say, I'm going 50-50. You handshake on it. Is that going to hold up in court when the game comes out and then all of a sudden it's a surprise success overnight and it makes $1 million, but it turns out that one person did like 90% of the game and then the other did like 10, and now we're like disputing who gets what? I actually get 90, you get 10 instead of the 50-50 we had agreed on. That's tricky. Again, when money comes into play, it gets very tricky. Okay, handshakes are for friendship, not for money. So put revenue splits in writing before money comes in. All right. And if things change, somebody has to leave the project, if contributions change, if the scope of the project changes, make sure to get those changes in writing, because it is going to bite you in the butt later if you didn't get any of this in writing and then disputes arise later. Okay. Running thing number 1, get a lawyer. Running thing number 2, get it in writing. So this one, if you're going to split revenue, if you're going to do anything related to money, get it in writing and agree beforehand. Next, mark your bingo card if you have commissioned art without a contract. All right, commissioned art without a contract. This happens a lot all over Instagram, social media, Twitter, whatever else. Like sometimes you really love someone's art style, you send them a DM, you say, hey, can you draw my dog in this super cute art style? Sure, but without a contract, expectations on both sides can be slippery, right? So you have to clarify. Do you own the art that the person makes for you, that commission, or do you only own a license to it, the right to use it for something? If you're going to commission somebody to do characters for your game, you have to make sure that, number 1, the ownership is very clear, but number 2, that this is understood between the parties and that the uses for which you can use it are understood. This is where a contract comes into play. The payment terms, the delivery of how long, how many revisions they can do and how they were going to deliver the final product to you. It's not very useful if they deliver you the final file in like a Photoshop file and then you can't do anything because you don't own Photoshop. So it's like, well, I needed it in a JPEG or a PNG to use it for the game. So yeah, those are some of the important things that you should get in writing, but honestly, there's so much more. Working with a lawyer helps, yes, but also these contracts, they really help to prevent disputes over portfolio rights too, because there are many times when a contract will say, you cannot use the art that you made for me in your own portfolio. And I know it sounds unfair, but they can absolutely first of all, write that into a contract. Second of all, you could agree to it if you don't read the contract carefully, and it might be within their right to do that. So it's important to be able to say, all right, I'm commissioning, or as the artist, I'm commissioning art, or I'm doing art for someone else. I want to have portfolio rights. I want to be able to have reuse rights so that I can use that character that I created for you in my own game. Or for the person who's commissioning the art to say, actually, don't take the character, use it, because then it's the main character in my game. People are going to get very confused if they see that character in your game or your stuff that has nothing to do with it, right? So things to keep in mind. Next. Didn't do a trademark or a Google search for your game name before launch. I know that this is a common one. So mark your bingo card if you did not do a trademark or Google search for your game name before launch. Could be game name, could be a main character name, could be like the major brand in your game, just your company name even. Didn't do it, right? So a quick search can reveal a lot. Takes 5 minutes to at least do a quick one. But before you invest money in putting the name of the game, creating a super cool font for it, going on the marketing binge of showing this game to the world. How unfortunate would it be that you put it out into the world and then realize that there's actually a game that already exists with that name and now you can't use it? So now you have to go back months of work to replace the name or do something else. It's unfortunate, but this stuff can cost a lot of money down the line. And it's something that takes 5 minutes for a quick one and more time for a more in-depth search, which honestly, this is definitely one of those places where work with a trademark lawyer because they know how to search the USPTO for any conflicts. They know how to search Google. They know how to reverse image search. It's important to clear your name early so that you can avoid all of these issues later in development. Also, when it comes to trademarks, it's a good idea to file them early. And I don't mean like you just came up with the idea and you're in concept and then file it. It's more a question for you as the developer of risk, but also of timing. You might want to file the trademark when you're closer to launch, when you're pretty sure that that's the name that you want to go with, so that you don't spend all the money to file a trademark and then change the name after and then spend all the money, but oh well. So important to work with a trademark attorney there because they know the ins and outs, but it is absolutely something that devs should think about, at least on the defensive side. Offensively, sure, you want to stop other people from using the name with your trademark, great, you can do that. But defensively, so that you reserve the name for yourself and you can actually guarantee that you can use it. Putting in that small investment up front will save so much money down the line, but also just keep the project flowing tight so that there are no big, production hurdles because of that. Okay? Next. Believed buying art means that you own the copyright. So if you mark your bingo card, if you have ever bought art and now you think that you own the copyright to it and you can do whatever you want to it. It doesn't necessarily work that way. It's different when it's like a piece of art that's being sold to you. That's one thing. But we're talking right now in the instance where if you commissioned art from somebody and the agreement didn't necessarily say anything about it, or there was no agreement, and now you think that, I can use it for whatever. I own the copyright. Like, I'm the owner. Not necessarily. Not in every case, right? Without a written assignment, the artist might still hold ownership over that art. You need language in an agreement that says that they assign all of their rights. And this is typically, if you've ever read a contract like this, where you have like a big block of text and it's like something work for hire, something assign all rights, something under US law, something copyright, whatever. These are all things that are important to negotiate ahead of time. But it's important that these contracts clearly spell out those rights and permissions so that both sides are privy to what's actually going to happen with the art. What is going to happen with it after? When do you receive it? Is it after payment? Once you receive it, can you do anything with it? Or are you restricted to only using it in the game? Like, there's so many things that you can negotiate ahead of time in a contract. So it's good to keep those things in mind. Also, paying for artwork doesn't automatically transfer the copyright. Like I said, just go back to that initial thing. The process of changing copyright hands is a little more complex than just sending somebody an image. I know it sounds silly when I say it like that, but like that is sometimes how it might seem. But it's important to know, yes, buying the art doesn't mean you own the copyright. You might need to facilitate another agreement to actually get the rights that you need for it. Okay. Next, mark your bingo card if you haven't registered your company yet. Sure, this is a question of timing. You might mark it and then it's because, I'm not at the point where I should be registering a company yet. But definitely mark this if you have a game that's about to launch and you still haven't registered a company yet. I think Steam will prevent you from putting up the game, but there might be other places where you can upload your game that you haven't registered your company yet and it's not a problem. So here's the issue. Without registration, you can be personally liable for debts, for disputes. Somebody sues you. Now, all of a sudden, you're on the hook for, some kind of like IP infringement, intellectual property infringement. But because you don't have a company to shield you from that, you're personally liable. And I don't know about you, but I don't think most people have like $20,000, $50,000, $1 million sometimes in damages is just what they ask for. Anything can happen and it's important to stay protected, right? So forming an LLC, a corporation, whatever route you want to take is going to help you be more protected. It is easier to also sign contracts, to hire people, and to raise funds as an entity because you have that. A lot of people, first of all, expect that. They expect, especially for investors, they expect you to have a company formed if they're going to give you money so that they know where their money's going. And they expect to have those protections. So, and it's also, like I said, easier to sign contracts sometimes like that, especially for hiring. And yeah, register the name early so that you can secure the business name. When I say register the name, I mean like register or form the company, register the name, whatever, through the state that you're in, or another one if you want to like be incorporated somewhere else. Delaware is a common one for a lot of corporations, for example. So get that done when you're ready, honestly, but sometime before launch, because the worst time would be to form the company like right before launch or after. It just makes things much muddier, much more complicated. There are ways to fix it in post, if you will, but like we don't even have to spend that money if we were to do it right the first time, you know? So next, mark your bingo card if you have posted devlog footage with copyrighted music. If you've ever created a super sick montage with a whole bunch of your gameplay, the artwork, this and that, devlog footage, right? And then you put somebody else's song over it. You decided to put, I don't know, the Hot to Go song over it, right? That's not your song. You know how music can be. I'm sure everyone knows that there was this whole issue many years ago with Twitch, and I know this happens on YouTube regularly too, where there was like that whole crackdown where people who were listening to like Spotify music in the background had to either archive their streams or delete them, which is like hours of content that they just can't do anything with, monetize anything, because they were using copyrighted music. People who make music, those industries, those agencies that, you know, have that represent artists and stuff, and the publisher companies, they don't play. They do not play with their music. So it's important for you to use royalty free, and make sure you check the license if you use royalty free. We said that before. Or original tracks in any public content. Internal is a different story. You know, if it's not, it's a question of risk at that point. If you don't foresee the thing that you're sharing internally to get out, you know, maybe you think, okay, maybe they have more leeway here. But if you're putting it out publicly on YouTube to show people development of the game or your Kickstarter, your crowdfunding campaign, whatever, use the original track, use the royalty free. Make sure you have the right rights, the right license to use that kind of music. Those streaming and YouTube bots, they will flag you even if it's a tiny clip. It'd really be unfortunate if your video came down because of that, especially because the appeals process is not always in your favor for like the DMCA strikes and everything. So if it's going to go in the public eye, try and replace the music. It might not sound the best, but it's the safest option. Next, quoted a meme in your game. If you have ever quoted a meme in your game, mark your bingo card. And I get this. It's like the proliferation of Roblox as a platform that people are building games on. And especially the things that are catching fire, all these steal a brain rot things, are using memes, and then people might be making all sorts of other games using those memes. They might quote them. They might think it's a parody. They might whatever. Tweets and memes can be copyrighted too, right? If it's an image, it can be copyrighted. If it's a line, it can be copyrighted. These are important things to keep in mind. And if you don't want to put it verbatim in your game because you're like, oh, now I'm scared. Now that I heard this, that I can quote a meme that's copyrighted and then get in trouble for it or get it taken down or something. If you don't want to deal with that hassle, consider making your own inspired version. And when I say inspired, I mean like change it, right? If you have to use it, parody it, transform it, do something to it so that it's not close to the original and it's your take on it. The more you do that, the more that we get into like fair use world, which I definitely want to say, and there might be another bingo card here for it or bingo thing for it, but fair use is not, it's only a defense. It is not something that you can just wave a flag and be like, fair use. No, no, no. It is something that comes into play at the point at which you've already gone to court probably, and that you're already like deep in it and you have to defend yourself. So you're like, oh, but it was fair use. But to get there, you have to spend a lot of money hiring a lawyer. You have to spend a lot of money responding to things in court. It gets complicated real quick. So long story short, make it as different as you can from the original, but consider if you want to deal with this in the first place. Next. Mark your bingo card if you have ever paid someone in exposure. All right. And I know that this gets a bad rap because of how many artists get paid in exposure when really it's just a way for somebody else to get free art, right? There are issues with this inherently, but it might not be as malicious as that or as nefarious as that. Sometimes it might be the case that somebody just really wants to work on your game and you're like, okay, sure, I'll take your, your fan art or whatever it is that you want to put in the game. There are issues with this. And a lot of the times it boils down to contract law. But on a more human note, of course, respect the value of creative labor, right? Artists work really hard to create the things that they're doing. It might take them 30 minutes to do this amazing sketch, but just because it took them a short amount of time, it's because they have done this for so many years that allows them to do it so quickly. So there's a lot of value in that. If you have to consider a small stipend or a revenue share or credit at the very least, like it's not just about like, oh, exposure, like just a tiny credit. It's something a little further beyond that. All of that should be documented. So again, get in writing, right? These things should be documented so that there's no issues or anything else later. I wrote there, exposure doesn't pay rent. It doesn't. Real compensation helps the case a lot, right? So just keep it in mind. Paying someone an exposure, paying someone with money, yeah, or paying someone with something else, revenue share, maybe money down the line also. Next, used open source code without reading the license. Mark your bingo card if you have ever used open source code without reading the license. All right. Oh, similar to the image and the music thing that we talked about earlier. It all boils down to the license. The license is really just an agreement between you, the user, and the person who made the thing that says, here's how you can use my thing. Don't do these things with it. Do these things with it, blah, blah, blah. That's a license. It's just a contract between two people, two parties, whoever. All right. So these, of course, contracts can vary just like any other. Some require attribution. Some limit commercial use. Sometimes they tell you, if you're going to use this asset or this code or whatever, you need to put the entire attribution, the entire license of this code, text, picture, whatever, into somewhere in your game. It could be in the files, it could be in the credits. It has to be somewhere. So it's important to keep a list of all of these open source code, especially, but open source items that you use. Okay. And then once you keep that in your back pocket, you can go back and reference, oh, okay, this is the license that goes with this open source code. Okay, this license says that I can use it without attribution. Great. Oh, but this license says that I actually need to put this entire block of text of the license with it. And if I don't, then there are repercussions. Okay, let me definitely do something about that. Also, make sure that the license terms are compatible with your project. Maybe you all have heard of copyleft licenses, which in a nutshell basically might say something like, if you use this code in your project, now the entire code belongs open source world. So be careful with that, because if you don't want your code to be public, using copyleft license code or text or whatever can potentially open you up to having to reveal that information. All right. So using open source code without reading the license, don't do that. Always read the license and mark your bingo card if you've ever done that. Next. Forgot to get publishing terms in writing. This can happen so many times. So mark your bingo card if you've ever forgotten to get publishing terms in writing. Here's where this might play out, right? You're at a conference, you're at GDC, you're at PAX, you're somewhere, and you're demoing your game at an indie booth, and then a publisher comes over and is like, oh, wow, I really like your game. Okay, yeah, we might publish it. You didn't get any of that in writing, and then like weeks pass by, they don't reach out to you, and then you're like, hey man, I've been like doing all this stuff because you said that you were going to publish it. Like, can we move forward the relationship? And then they're like, no, sorry, I'm good. I don't remember saying that. Get that in writing. If you say you're going to do something, or if they say they're going to do something, get it in writing. Nail down the royalty percentage if you're going to go down the royalty route. Any rights that the publisher might get, any kind of like, if they have rights over creative direction, if they have rights to sell the product in different areas, in different SKUs, like maybe on Switch, maybe on PlayStation, and milestones. Make sure you get all of that in a contract. There is so much that goes into publishing, and I know that a lot of these sessions were about publishing, so this is going to be like a microcosm of what you're going to experience when it comes to publishing, but clarifying who owns the IP after publishing, and really just honestly boiling it down to like, anybody who's like, oh, just trust me, bro, when it comes to publishing or any other kind of function marketing, for example, or anything else, just be wary of people like that. But also make sure that you are diligent in getting these things in writing, the deal terms in writing that eventually might go to a contract. Okay. Next. didn't collect tax info from collaborators. This is something to talk to an accountant about. This is not necessarily like a legal part that I am super, super, super well versed in, but I know that collecting a W-9 or something before paying could be important to your kind of company if that's how you're doing employment or contract or whatever it might be. Make sure to report those payments properly to avoid any kind of IRS issues, because we all know we don't want the IRS coming knocking on our door. Those fees and those fines add up, and it's just difficult to get it taken away. And have records, keep records. This is another, okay, I'm gonna add like a fourth like running theme. Keep records. Besides just getting it in writing, keep those records somewhere where you can access them, so that if disputes arise later, you have proof of what you're talking about, and it's not like lost in the void, because a lot of times accountants need that kind of stuff. Okay, next. Collected player emails without consent. Mark your bingo card if you have collected player emails without consent. Right? So you want their emails to be able to communicate with them about the game, but you didn't tell them that when they play tested your game and gave you their email to play test the game, that you'd also be using it for marketing purposes. That's where they get you, so to speak. Always get opt-in consent for mailing lists. This is something that happens everywhere. Companies want your email so that they can talk to you. And if you're going to grab that email, it is a responsibility on you to do that. So you have to think through, do I really want to collect this personally identifiable information, of which email is a part, so that I can put my game out there, so that I can do what I want to do with my game. Just avoid collecting data that you don't want that responsibility over, because once you start collecting those emails, you might need a privacy policy. Actually, you probably do need a privacy policy. So keep that in mind. And if you're going to get their email, again, that responsibility comes with storing it safely, only using it for the stated purpose that you said, making sure that it's safeguarded, right? Again, Spider-Man meme. Okay, next. Mark your bingo card if you have ever said, it's fair use. All right, a lot of people say this. A lot of people might not know what it really means for fair use, okay? But is it though? Fair use, again, is a defense. This is that slide I was talking about earlier. It's not a right. You don't have a right to fair use. It's a judge that might decide if it was fair use or not. They get to decide that, not you. So when you're in doubt, you can design a more original character. You can make sure that any parody adds commentary transformation. But don't just assume, oh, it's fair use, because actually you don't get to decide that. The judge does. And last time I checked, a lot of devs aren't judges for obvious reasons. So keep that in mind. Mark your bingo card if you've ever worked with a friend without defining roles. Friendship is not a business plan. This goes with that middle free space, right? But we're friends. No. It is an uncomfortable conversation. I get it. Really uncomfy vibes. But it's good to get this stuff done ahead of time and make sure that everybody's on the same page ahead of time, so that you can actually preserve the friendship long term. It's called boundaries, and we all have them. We all need them. But in the contract sense, it's so that everybody knows who is doing what, who owns what are the rules, where's the money going, where's it flowing, right? Next, if you've ever used an old build in a trailer, mark your bingo card. So old builds can misrepresent your game to publishers or players. False advertisement is no fun. We can all think of like old E3 examples where this might have been the case and that didn't end well for the companies, either in a business or a legal sense. Make sure to label your footage as work in progress if you must show it. And yeah, always aim to show your most accurate, polished version. That way people don't come and be like, actually, your game looked like a beautiful cinematic in the trailer, but then when I actually got to play it, it's like polygons. It's like RuneScape Classic versus RuneScape, like the modern version. So it's just important to keep those things in mind. Oh, and we're at the free space, but we're friends. No, I mean, yes, be friends and work on games together if you're friends. Sure, do whatever you want, but just make sure that you get things in writing, get a lawyer when you need them, and talk with your friends beforehand to get these things understood amongst each other, so that there's no disputes in the future. Because again, that's the really unfortunate part. Thank you so much, everybody, for playing. I can't wait to see if anybody got bingo. If you did, it's like reverse, because the prize is knowledge. If you got bingo, now you know that maybe there are some things that you got to think a little more critically about when it comes to the legal side and business side of game development. So I hope this was super useful for everybody. If you want to connect with me, that QR code will take you to my LinkedIn. If you have any questions, also feel free to email me if you have any questions about your indie game. I think I'm going to be in the Discord after for any questions too. So yeah, thank you so much for playing. I really look forward to hearing any feedback on it. Because when I was playing in person, we had crayons, it was a whole thing. And now virtually, I get to talk at a screen like a streamer for an hour. So
You did great. We actually, oh, we did have a bingo. We had a bingo that just came in.
nice.
Oh no, bingo.
Oh,
I was sitting here waiting because I was like, oh, if a bingo pops up, I'm literally going to put it on screen and yell bingo.
thank you.
Didn't happen. We have a question. Here, let me go ahead and pop down your stream now. I think that was enough time to get the QR code. If anybody missed it, if you want it back up, just let me know. So on YouTube, you recommended registering a business early, but that can be hard with name changes as it gets closer to shipping. Do you have specific advice about maybe forming a company without a final name?
When you go to register the company, you're going to have to put something in, and you might want to decide like what you want your company name to be at some point. But I mean, there are ways that obviously you can change the name, but it just brings a lot more stress later down the line. So the company name, the game name is one thing, the company name is another. So when it comes to the game name, I think it's important to lock that down a little earlier after checking to see if things are available and safe to use. Checking, like I said, the USPTO, checking Google, checking all these other areas. But when it comes to your business name, although it doesn't show as much as like the game name and isn't as prominent, it's still important for it to not conflict with other businesses or other things that might cause confusion, especially if somebody already has a trademark over something. Those things are important. So yeah, that's what I would say. I would say that think about it when you're closer to like when you're going to launch, but try and lock something down a little earlier so that you can make sure that you get the name that you want. And I know that these things change, but it'll help you down the line.
Nice. We have another one that just came in on YouTube. Is creating an LLC just the quick and easy fix if you want to move ahead, or is it a viable long-term option considering growth potential and stuff as well?
Yeah, so LLC is one of the easier ones that you can do that is still protective of your IP, of your general structure and formation of you for personal liability purposes, right? The LLC is, I would say, quick and easy. The corporation has a lot more that goes into it, and it's also typically more expensive to both form but also maintain. You might have to pay taxes on it in the future, especially if you're giving out equity. So it's important to keep those things in mind. But it kind of depends on what your goal is with the game. If you're treating this game like a startup and you just want to build a game so that it gets acquired in 5 years, maybe you can consider starting off as a corporation. That way it's easier, number one, to find funding if we're talking startup vibes, but number two, so that when you finally get an investor or someone or someone who's trying to acquire your product, it's way easier for them a lot of times to deal with a corporation instead of an LLC. So it's kind of like a question of not only risk but also what you're trying to do down the line. For a lot of developers, though, an LLC is just fine for their purposes. It just, corporation comes more into play when you're looking for investment. You're looking for more like giving out equity in a more specific way, because even with an LLC, you can give out equity, but it might be a little different than the process is, a little more difficult maybe than the process is for corporate, especially when you're bringing on investors. It's just, corporations make it much easier to do that. But if you're not looking for that, kind of like look inward and be like, okay, where do I foresee my game going? Do I want to just keep it for myself? Do I plan to super duper expand? You can always take an LLC and make it into a corporation later. So it's like not like one door is closed when you do one or the other, but that's something to keep in mind. Also, when you do that, sometimes you would have to, maybe transfer all the assets. But again, all of this can be done after the fact, but doing that kind of reflection inward at the beginning can help you save some money up front, whether you want to do LLC or corporation.
So I actually have a question. You had mentioned about music and whatnot, and making sure you read licenses, all that. What if you are just posting some sort of creation on like TikTok or Reels or something like that, because they all have the option to where you can just put a sound in? Does it fall under that, or is that like free to use since it's built into the platform?
I hate to give the lawyer answer, but here goes. It depends. And it depends so much because there's so many questions. It's like, if you're just putting it for promotional purposes and you want to use that clip, that's fine. But then this has happened to me so many times on social media. I'll put up the clip and then the song will go down. It'll get taken down for whatever reason, and then it's quiet. And then it's like, well, that's awkward. So it's just, we solve so many problems by having original music that's in the trailer or whatever clip that we want to put up in the first place, as opposed to having to deal with it later. Those also depend a little bit also on like the specific publisher, the specific artist who exactly put up the song. Because something I've noticed on Instagram, for example, is that the song that I want to put up, the Dragon Ball, OST song, it's not in the app as like the original company that created it, but it's somebody who like downloaded it from YouTube and then re-uploaded it, and it's some random person. Yeah. So it's important to know that those might get taken down anyway, and to check like who's uploading these things as well.
I wasn't sure if it would fall under that or not. On TikTok, my voice keeps getting flagged as copyright, and I don't really understand why. Yeah.
And I've seen like a lot of these companies are putting in algorithms that might detect things that are just not the case until you appeal it, which obviously from a consumer it's annoying, because it's like then you have to go through the process of appealing it and making sure. I will say that when it comes to singing, this was a big thing when I used to host Extra Life charity streams. I used to do this like the 12-hour ones, and always being careful not to start singing or breaking out into song, because that can also get flagged, and that's also not okay. So like no random dance karaoke in like streaming or anything that you're putting up, because that can also get you in trouble.
Does anybody have any questions? We still have a few minutes. I really thought this was cool. So we've never had any type of a game for any of our talks, and like it was really awesome. I enjoyed every moment of it.
I'm so happy to hear that. Like I said, when it was in person, it was interesting because like people did yell it out, and like sometimes they got it at the same time. And that's pretty funny to me, because it just means that I definitely hit on something on that one that I put. So it's like great feedback for me to know, okay, what are the more common ones as opposed to the less common ones. Super, super fun time.
No, that's very awesome. Let's see. So we have people who are saying, oh, stupid computer. This is great and engaging.
Thank you.
Oh, here. We actually have a question. How far can I go with the term parody?
The term parody is one that is a sliding scale. I mean, you can go super ham like South Park and just do that. And because they're a big company, right, they might not be exposed to liability in the same way that a smaller company that, somebody else could sue pretty easily would be. I'm pretty sure South Park would be able to fight the thing in court because they have a lot of money, versus a smaller studio that might not have the funds to even get sued in the first place. So honestly, it always boils down to a question of risk. It boils down to, am I willing to like potentially lose a lot of money for the company just because I want to make this one joke, or I want to parody this one person? Also, some people are more litigious than others. They're more prone to sue. I think we've seen a certain president suing a lot of different people for things that have been said about him, whether they're defamatory or not. Some people are just more litigious like that. Same thing with like, a company like Nintendo or Pokemon. They tend to sue more often than others. So it's important to keep in mind who you're parodying and how they respond to other parodies, so that you don't fall down the same rabbit hole of like getting sued over it. And if you do, make sure you have the funds to do something about it. So again, big question of risk no matter what.
All right. So on LinkedIn, how do mainstream games protect from the games inspire violence issue? Is that usually covered in terms and conditions? I never see them in games like Call of Duty.
I hear what you're talking about. It seems to be about the discourse that video games cause shootings, video games cause violence, video games do these things. It's difficult for a company to protect themselves against this. Honestly, I'm not sure that there's so much that they can do in the terms and conditions that a well-crafted PR strategy might not be able to have to tackle at the end of the day anyway. Maybe there are some places where they can say these things, but I'm not sure in a legal way how the interplay might be there. I think that it's really unfortunate, by the way, that people still have this very old mentality that video games cause violence. There's a lot of other reasons that lead to the things that we see in the news and happening around the country. And I don't think that video games are it. But of course, this is a matter of opinion, and that's my opinion. But also, that's what I think. It's difficult to safeguard against that at the outset versus having to deal with it after.
Veda, thank you so very much. Your talk was awesome. I loved it. Chat, thank you for being here and participating with us. Up next, we have Nicole with their talk on current state of crowdfunding and how to build a community. Sorry. So just hang tight on YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitch, wherever you're watching, and we'll be back in a few. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.